Marathon hasn't even launched yet, and somehow it's already one of the most debated shooters of the year. Not because the full game is out, but because the free preview server Slam has given players their first real hands-on look, and the reaction so far has been complicated. Today, we're looking at what's actually going wrong, what players are saying, and whether Marathon can realistically recover from a rough start before day one even arrives. To understand why expectations are so high, you have to look at the name attached to this project. Marathon isn't just another sci-fi shooter. It's a series that goes back to the mid-1990s, when Bungie released the original Marathon trilogy. Those games helped define the studio long before Halo or Destiny. They were known for ambitious storytelling, strange AI characters, and a sense of mystery that stuck with fans for decades. So, when Bungie announced a new Marathon in 2023, people expected something meaningful. A revival of a classic universe with modern technology behind it. But this new Marathon isn't a campaign shooter. It's a PvP extraction game built around squads of runners dropping into a dangerous environment, collecting loot, and trying to escape alive. That shift alone created a divide. Some players were excited for a fresh take on the extraction genre, while others were confused about why a story-heavy classic was returning as a competitive live service title. Development hasn't been simple either. Marathon went through delays, internal restructuring at Bungie, and early tests that didn't generate much excitement. The studio has been under pressure after layoffs and changes following Sony's acquisition. While Bungie hasn't shared exact budget numbers, reporting around their projects suggests a large, multi-year investment, the kind of budget that comes with high expectations from both the publisher and the community. That brings us to the server Slam, the first time the public has been able to play a slice of the game. And the reaction has been mixed in a very specific way. On the first day, Marathon saw a huge wave of interest. Steam alone peaked at over 100,000 concurrent players, which shows that curiosity is not the problem. But over the next few days, those numbers dropped sharply. That kind of decline isn't unusual for a test weekend, but it does reflect how players are feeling about the experience. One of the biggest pieces of feedback is about pacing. Many players expected a more active extraction experience, but instead they're saying the world feels too empty. There aren't enough PvP encounters to create the tension and unpredictability that extraction shooters rely on. Squads can go long stretches without seeing another player, which makes the matches feel slower and less dynamic than people expected. At the same time, the PvE enemies that do appear are hitting much harder than players anticipated. The AI enemies feel overtuned, especially for a preview build, and some players say they're spending more time fighting bullet sponge creatures than engaging with other squads. That combination, low PvP density and high PvE difficulty, creates a strange imbalance that makes the core loop feel off. Another major point of criticism is the UI. Players have said the menus are difficult to read, icons are unclear, and navigation feels clunky. Bungie has already acknowledged this publicly, saying the UI is a major focus and will continue to evolve before and after launch. Performance has also been a concern, especially on handheld PCs like the Steam Deck and ROG Ally. Early impressions suggest the game needs more optimization before it feels smooth on portable hardware. The server Slam itself is limited by design. Only a couple of zones are available, a handful of runner shells, and early contracts for 5 factions. Bungie has said that more maps, factions, contracts, and gear will be available at launch and throughout Season 1. But right now, players are judging the game based on this slice, and first impressions matter, especially for a paid live service title launching into a crowded genre. Across social media and early reviews, the sentiment is mixed. Some players say the foundation is interesting, and they can see the potential. Others feel the game is missing something, whether it's clearer direction, more consistent pacing, or a stronger sense of identity. On PlayStation, Early user reviews during the preview have been low, reflecting that split reaction. And because the game hasn't launched yet, these impressions are shaping expectations for day one. There's also the broader context. Marathon is entering a genre filled with strong competitors. Games like Escape from Tarkov, Hunt, Showdown, and even DMZ have years of refinement behind them. Players are comparing Marathon to titles that already have deep progression systems, large maps, and established communities. And with Marathon launching at a price point of $39, players expect a polished experience from the start, not a foundation that needs months of updates. But there's a human side to this story too. Marathon wasn't built by a faceless corporation. It was built by developers who spent years trying to create something new inside a universe they care about. They've talked about wanting to capture tension, unpredictability, and the feeling of barely making it out alive. They've made design decisions based on testing, feedback, and the realities of modern game development. When a preview lands with mixed reactions, it's not just a product being judged. It's years of work being evaluated in real time. Since the server slam began, Bungie has already pushed out updates, addressed bugs, and acknowledged the biggest concerns. They've promised adjustments to PvP density, PvE tuning, UI clarity, and performance. They've said more content is coming at launch, and more improvements will follow. Bungie has a history of evolving their games over time. Destiny is the clearest example of that. But the challenge here is timing. Marathon doesn't have months to win people over. It needs to make a strong impression on day one. Right now, Marathon is in a delicate position. The interest is clearly there, but the preview hasn't convinced players yet. The feedback is loud, the concerns are real, and the launch window is close. The server slam has shown that the foundation has potential, but it also highlighted the gaps that Bungie needs to address quickly. So the honest place to end is this. Marathon hasn't failed, but it hasn't won people over either. The server slam exposed issues that Bungie now has to respond to immediately. Whether the game recovers depends on how fast and how boldly the studio adjusts the experience. Not months from now, but right at launch. And that's what everyone will be watching when the full game finally arrives.